My name is Sarah, and I'll never forget the day my husband, Ronald, stood in a Chicago courtroom and sneered at me. She never contributed anything meaningful, he said. Those words cut through 7 years of my life like a knife. 7 years I had spent juggling 3 jobs, skipping meals, and investing every penny into his dream of building a tech empire. The courtroom fell silent, all eyes fixed on me, waiting to see if I would collapse. Vivian, his mother, sat behind him, nodding with that smug expression that screamed, "I always knew you weren't good enough for my golden boy." But I wasn't there to crumble. I stood, hands trembling, yet my voice steady, and said, "Your Honor, I'd like to submit this prenup from Florence." The gasp from Ronald's side of the room made every sleepless night worth it. Let me take you back and show you how I got to that moment. It began on a humid summer evening in Chicago, at a networking event in a stylish downtown loft. I was 28, working as a financial analyst at Sterling Partners, one of the city's top firms. My corner office overlooked Lake Michigan, and that morning my boss had just tapped me for the executive fast track program, a rare opportunity for someone my age. "You're going places, Sarah," he had said, giving me an encouraging clap on the shoulder. I believed him. Growing up in a working-class suburb, with my mom teaching third grade and my dad fixing cars, I had clawed my way through college on a scholarship, determined to make them proud. Finance was my ticket to stability and maybe, someday, my own corner office. That night, the loft buzzed with young professionals, glasses clinking, conversations full of ambition. Across the room, Ronald caught my eye. His easy smile and animated gestures drew a small crowd as he pitched his idea for Apex Innovations, a tech startup designed to simplify inventory management for small businesses. His passion was magnetic, talking algorithms, market opportunities, and a future where his software could change lives. I found myself leaning in, captivated as he explained his vision over a cheap glass of wine on the balcony. "The problem is funding," he admitted quietly. "Investors won't touch an improvement idea from a guy like me." His honesty drew me in. Here was a dreamer, someone believing in something bigger, just like I did. 3 months later, we were inseparable. One morning, Ronald's laptop, his lifeline for coding, crashed, and he couldn't afford a replacement. Without hesitation, I bought him a new one on my credit card. "You're investing in us," he said softly, kissing me. "I'll make it worth it, Sarah." I believed him. 6 months later, he quit his IT job to work on Apex full-time. His savings ran out, investor pitches failed, and soon I was covering our bills, his rent, even his car payment. "It's temporary," he promised over late-night instant noodle dinners in our cramped apartment. I nodded, trusting the spark in his eyes. A year later, we got engaged, and my career reached a crossroads. Sterling offered me a transfer to London for a year-long executive program, an express route to senior management. Ronald didn't plead for me to stay, but the slump in his shoulders said it all. He needed me here. I turned it down. 2 weeks later, Sterling restructured my role, a polite way of letting me go. I cried in Ronald's arms that night as my dreams slipped away. "Maybe it's a sign," he whispered, holding me close. "You can help me build Apex. We'll do this together." I wanted to believe him, and I did. The next few years blurred into exhaustion and hope. To keep Apex afloat, I took a job as an administrative assistant at a medical office, earning half my previous salary. When that wasn't enough, I picked up weekend shifts at Rosie's Diner, serving burgers and fries to tipsy college kids and tired truckers. Weeknights, I drove for a rideshare app, my car filling with the smell of coffee and regret. Sometimes my old Sterling colleagues would hop in the back seat, their awkward silences louder than any words. "Sarah, I thought you were headed for the corner suite," one said once, their pity stinging sharper than the cold Chicago wind. I'd smile, mumble about supporting Ronald's startup, and change the subject. Inside, I was screaming. At home, Ronald coded endlessly in our tiny apartment, eyes glued to the screen, while I soaked my aching feet. He'd surface only for coffee, excitedly recounting breakthroughs or meetings that led nowhere. I stretched every dollar to cover prototype costs, server fees, anything to keep his dream alive. My family didn't understand. My sister once grabbed my hand over coffee. "You're killing yourself for his dream, not yours," she said. I brushed it off, but her words lingered. Vivian, Ronald's mother, was far worse. From the beginning, she looked at me as if I were a stain on her perfect world. At our courthouse wedding, with only her in attendance, that disdain never faded. Her thin, tight-lipped smile said everything. I wasn't good enough for her son, she'd insist. Ronald deserves someone who truly recognizes his brilliance. She'd glance at my diner uniform as if it were a personal insult. I swallowed my pride, reminding myself this was for us. Then Florence appeared. Ronald had landed a meeting with an Italian investor who offered to cover our travel, our so-called honeymoon. I was excited, finally a break from the endless grind, but Ronald spent most of our days locked in meetings. I wandered the cobblestone streets alone, sipping espresso in charming little cafes. One evening, after a successful pitch, Ronald celebrated with a little too much wine. While he slept it off, I struck up a conversation with an American expat at a cafe, a businesswoman who noticed the worry etched on my face. "You're funding his dream," she told me. "Protect yourself." She connected me with a local lawyer, Senor Rossi, who drew up a prenup recognizing my financial contributions and granting me 49% of Apex. The next night, I slid the papers into a stack of investment documents over more wine. Ronald, blissfully blurry-eyed, signed without reading. Oblivious, he toasted to our future. Back in Chicago, the grind resumed. I worked tirelessly while Ronald coded, and Apex slowly began to take shape. A small client here, a beta tester there. But as the company grew, Ronald began to drift away. He hired Lauren, a polished MBA grad whose smile never reached her eyes. She organized his life with an unsettling efficiency. Vivian also started showing up more, doling out advice on everything from branding to office decor. I felt invisible in my own life, my sacrifices fading behind Ronald's rising star. By the time Apex landed its first major client, our marriage was barely recognizable. Ronald stayed late at the office, citing deadlines, while I juggled multiple jobs under Vivian's constant jabs. "You wouldn't understand the business side," she sneered whenever I questioned a decision. Lauren offered no relief. At a company event, she greeted me with a cool, dismissive, "Oh, you're Ronald's wife." Her words stung, especially as I stood there in a clearance rack dress, holding a tray of appetizers I had made between shifts. Ronald's little luxuries began appearing: new suits, a sleek watch, haircuts costing more than my weekly tips. "Client impressions," he'd mutter, barely sparing me a glance. Meanwhile, I wore thrift store clothes and drove a rattling old sedan. The office moved to a shiny new space in Chicago's Loop, walls lined with photos. Ronald with investors at conferences accepting awards. My years of funding and bookkeeping had vanished from the story entirely. One night, exhausted and too tired to cook, I fell asleep on the couch waiting for him. His phone buzzed beside me, left behind in his rush. A message from Lauren lit up the screen. "Dinner at Giovanni's tonight. Your favorite table." I scrolled, my heart sinking, late-night texts, inside jokes, compliments about his new sharp suit. When I confronted him, he bristled. "She's my assistant, Sarah. She's doing her job. You're overreacting." The warm, familiar tone I once loved was gone, replaced with cutting words labeling me as emotional, irrational. The man who had once valued my financial savvy now treated me like a burden. My birthday went unnoticed. Our anniversary became just another day. When Apex was featured in Chicago Business Magazine, I wasn't mentioned once in the glowing profile of Ronald's solo journey. I stared at the photos: Ronald, Lauren, Vivian, smiling in the sleek office I helped build. "It's not about you," Ronald said when I brought it up, eyes glued to his laptop. "It's about the business." The final straw came when I borrowed his laptop to pay bills, still my responsibility. Amid Apex's success, I noticed a minimized document, a lease for a luxury River North condo, effective immediately. That night, Ronald didn't come home. He started coming home later and later, always carrying the scent of someone else's perfume. "This isn't working," he said flatly. "We want different things." 2 days later, he moved out. 3 weeks after that, divorce papers arrived while I was on my dinner shift, offering next to nothing for 7 years of my life. When I called Ronald, Vivian answered, her tone dripping with smugness. You should be grateful for his offer, she said. What did you ever do besides play support staff? The courtroom was suffocating, the tension thick and palpable. I sat beside Rachel Cohen, my attorney, wearing a second-hand suit that hung loosely on me, faded from years of running between jobs. Rachel's sharp eyes scanned the room. Her confidence was the only anchor I had. Across the aisle, Ronald's team of top Chicago attorneys formed a wall of perfectly tailored suits. Lauren was there, her navy dress screaming professionalism, not mistress. Vivian, in cream and pearls, angled herself close to Ronald, her gaze cutting straight through me. Judge Margaret Hayes, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, took her seat. Ronald's lead lawyer, James Whitaker, began with a smooth narrative. Ronald, the visionary who built Apex Innovations from the ground up, was allegedly offering me a generous settlement that I had foolishly refused. Rachel's response was calm but firm. My client played a critical role in founding Apex. This settlement completely ignores her contributions. Whitaker called Ronald to the stand, painting him as a self-made genius. Then he turned to me. Miss Sarah, what exactly was your role at Apex? Ronald's answer was a knife to my heart. She worked odd jobs, waitressing, driving, some bookkeeping early on. Nothing significant. Each word shrunk the room, reducing my 7 years to a string of minor tasks. Vivian's approving nod from the gallery burned. When it was my turn, Whitaker's questions dripped with condescension. You earn $43,000 a year across 3 jobs, correct? Quite a step down from your finance career. Was financial gain your motivation in marriage? Rachel objected. Argumentative, the judge sustained, but the damage was done. The story was clear. Ronald, the provider, me, the freeloader. Vivian testified next, pearls glinting as she feigned sympathy. Sarah was happy to stay on the sidelines, more interested in money than Ronald's vision. Her words were rehearsed, each syllable carving away at my worth. By the afternoon, I was drowning in their narrative, my sacrifices twisted into greed. I leaned toward Rachel. I can't take more of this. It's time to show the prenup. She nodded, her eyes fierce. As Whitaker began his closing, Ronald interrupted, voice bold. Your Honor, I built Apex. Sarah's just after my money. She never did anything real. The silence that followed was deafening. Vivian's smug tap on the bench echoed in my ears. I stood, legs trembling, but my voice steady. Your Honor, I'd like to submit this prenup from Florence. Rachel handed the judge the manila envelope. Judge Hayes raised an eyebrow. The notarized document, signed 7 years ago, bore Ronald's signature. Whitaker faltered. We weren't aware of any prenup, Your Honor. We question its validity. Rachel cut through the tension. This agreement, signed during their honeymoon, grants my client 49% ownership of Apex Innovations, recognizing her financial input and sweat equity. The courtroom buzzed. Ronald went pale, whispering frantically to Whitaker. Vivian clutched her pearls, her outrage almost comical. Judge Hayes slammed the gavel. Mr. Ronald, do you recognize this signature? He stammered. I signed something in Florence, but I wasn't fully aware. There was wine. The judge's gaze was withering. You met investors that day, correct? Were you impaired? I spoke up. He was coherent enough to secure our first funding. Judge Hayes nodded, scanning the document. For the next half hour, Rachel meticulously detailed my contributions. Every dollar, every shift, every sacrifice. The narrative shifted. I wasn't the gold digger. I was the partner who made Apex possible. Judge Hayes didn't mince words. The prenup is valid, she declared, steady and firm. Sarah is recognized as owning 49% of Apex Innovations and its assets. The motion for spousal support is denied, as her ownership makes it unnecessary. The parties will mediate to structure their business relationship or negotiate a buyout. Ronald's team deflated. Vivian's hand froze on her pearls. Lauren stared at the floor. I felt no triumph, only a strange emptiness. 7 years of my life had been reduced to percentages, yet no ruling could heal the betrayal. Outside, reporters swarmed, eager for drama. Sarah, How does it feel to be Apex's hidden partner? One shouted. Before I could answer, Ronald stepped forward, clipped. This is private. We'll resolve it professionally. I met his eyes, calm but firm. I've been silent too long. Apex was built on our partnership. I look forward to its future, whether I'm involved or not. The words felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Months later, after tense negotiations, Ronald and I agreed on a buyout. The funds allowed me to launch Sarah's Financial Solutions, a Chicago consultancy helping women secure funding and protect their stakes. My modest downtown office felt like a fresh start. One evening, my assistant brought lilies and a note. Congrats on the ink feature. You earned it. The magazine had highlighted my journey, crediting my role in Apex and praising my new venture. I kept the flowers but didn't reply. Some chapters are best left closed. Over dinner with friends who had stood by me, I laughed, truly laughed, for the first time in years. The weight of invisibility was gone. I had reclaimed my voice, my worth, my future. I wasn't just the woman who funded Ronald's dream. I was Sarah building my own. To everyone who's followed my journey, thank you. You've witnessed sacrifice, betrayal, and triumph. If my story moved you, hit that subscribe button and join us. Every choice, every struggle, every victory tells a story of grit, heart, and resilience. Keep chasing your truth, and I'll see you at the finish.